You probably already figured out that playing jazz chords is about more than just memorizing diagrams. When you listen to Joe Pass, it's obvious that there's a lot more going on. But what skills do you actually need in your jazz chord toolkit? I've been teaching jazz guitar for more than 20 years, and in this video I'm gonna show you how to build those skills so that you don't end up stuck just stringing together random chord grips. I'm going to take a basic turnaround and step by step go from this to this. The first skill you need is to be able to play the chords as simple but clear voicings, and the place to start here is shell voicings, 3-note voicings that nail the sound of the chord with root, third and seventh. Shell voicings have the root on the 5th and 6th string and the chord on the middle string set. And this C major 7 with the root on the 6th string. For the turnaround we can start with these chords. Before we move on to adding rhythm, if you want to explore the shell voicings in more detail, you can check out the 2 exercises that are included in the article on my website. They take the chords through the scale, something that's a useful exercise for most chords and chord types, and is of course also in the free PDF download for this lesson. The next skill is rhythm. Jazz is of course not just harmony, and the place you want to start is to be able to lay down a groove yourself. Try to imagine a basic jazz groove and play some simple rhythms over that groove with the chords that you just learned. And in the next example, pay attention to the length of the notes. As you probably noticed, in jazz you often play short chords with a beginning and an end, because that connects better with the groove compared to long chords that just sort of fade without any definition. Now, the first exercise you can use to develop your vocabulary is composing rhythms for this turnaround. Like this, you don't want to play each chord more than once or twice, and you only have 4 options for where you can place them. So if you start experimenting, you will easily find some good rhythms that you can add to your playing. Here's another variation, and then I'll show you how to add another dimension to these chords. A bonus part of using shell voicings is the built-in split. You have a natural split between the bass note and the chord. It's like having a bass drum and a snare drum to comp with. Check out how that sounds in this example. It's really perfect for comping in a duo setting, and using that split will also make bossa nova and samba a lot easier to learn. As you can hear, you're laying down a complete groove like this, and now we can start adding some notes to the chords. With some rhythms in your playing, there's more room to add color and melody, and a common beginner mistake is to focus only on the numbers, so the chord extensions. Now, probably because jazz is thought of as having complicated chords, but you don't want to focus on the chords as vertical, isolated things. Because jazz is about having harmony that flows from one chord to the next. So you want to learn how to put them together in progressions and connect them. And one of the strongest ways to have that connection, you actually just heard it, is with the melody. Instead of just finding colorful extensions, you're better off looking for options for melodies. And I usually think of this as a small scale built around each of the chords, like this. The C major 7 shell voicing already has the 3rd on top as a melody note. And if you add the next string, you can also use the 5th G or the 13th A. And don't think of these as 3 different chords, just as variations of that same C major 7 shell voicing. And try to use these notes to create melodies, something like this, and notice how I just used the basic C major 7 in the diagram, because that's what you're thinking. For the A7, this is a secondary dominant, so a chord that is added to pull us to D minor 7, and you treat that as a dominant from D minor since it resolves to D minor 7. And that means that it actually has a flat 9. So we have the 7th as a melody note, and then the root, and the flat 9. The D minor 7 already has an F as a melody note, and then you also get the 11th G, and of course the 5th A. Since the notes that you're adding are all on the B string, you can already tell that it will be fairly easy to connect the melody notes across the chords. The G7 has the same melody notes as D minor 7, which makes that even easier. So you have F, G, and the 9th A. With this, you already have a lot to work with in turning the chords into music. Check out how this example also has the melody notes work independently, similar to how the bass note was allowed to be independent in the previous section. You can go a lot further with this, but for that you need to build skills with rootless chords. Before we get to that, let's just check out this bonus skill, which is easier with simple chords, but still sounds amazing. Walking bass with chords is a bit of a specialized skill, but it is also one of the most fun ways to comp, and it just sounds incredibly cool. Now the good news is, you already know the chords that we're using here. So just the basic chords that we had at the beginning of the video. Now for this progression with 2 chords per bar, you only need 2 bass notes per chord, and one of them is the root that you're already playing. The point of the other bass note is to lead to the next chord, and a great way to start is to use a chord tone. So in this case the 5th G, moving up to A, which is the next root, and then the E, again the 5th, moving down to the D, that's the root of the next chord. Chord tones are nice and clear and don't get in the way. Now on the G7, I'm adding sort of a quick chromatic note, which is a D flat to take us down to the C, and that's another option. Chromatic leading notes pull more towards the resolution, and you also hear that when I'm using a B flat the second time around, so going down to that A, and of course also the final D flat resolving down to the C. The chord voicings are all basic shell voicings, but you can still explore different rhythms with them. Start with just playing on the beat of each chord just to build the foundation. Once you can do that, try to play the chord right after the chord change, so on 1 or 3, because that really helps you get the swing feel across in your groove. Now the last chord also demonstrates how to play the chord twice. And now you can mix that up a bit and gradually develop your playing using chord tones and chromatic bass notes plus different rhythms with the chords. Let's get back to comping and explore some rootless voicings. I don't think Yngwie Malmsteen is watching my videos, but in this case, making the chords smaller does give you a lot more options. And Yngwie, if you're watching, the next section will go back to more is more, so just skip ahead.
How can less be more? It's impossible.
You just saw how keeping chords basic made it easier to move the bass around, but what if you want more color and more options for melody? Now that's where rootless voicings come in, because when you drop the root, you're literally freeing up a finger to do something more interesting. Check out these voicings where I've already added a note to the chord as we did in the previous section. And let's take away the root from those. And now it becomes a lot easier to add melody with the notes that you already found in the 3rd section of this video. What I'm doing here is still melody-focused comping, but now I'm keeping it really practical and playable by leaving out the root. And now I'm using a lot more notes, and you have these notes around C major 7. And for A7, you could use all these variations. And keep in mind that you should go with what you find playable. So these are my examples, and feel free to add or take out notes to make it easier for you to play. Here's D minor 7, which has a lot of notes. And G7 is again very similar. And when you use these, then mix up the 3 and 4 note versions of the chords, like this. But you can also start adding entire chords to the mix, so let's explore some passing chords. For this video, the principle for adding passing chords is actually very simple, but super effective. You add a dominant chord a half step above the chord that you're going to, and we're keeping those dominants unaltered. As an example, the progression moves from C major 7 to A7. And And you can add a B flat 7 as a passing chord. And another one that I'll explain after the example. The other passing chord was the A flat 7, so this one that's taking us down to the G7. Now, if you were to analyze these dominant passing chords, they would be considered tritone substitutions, but that's not that important for how you use them here. And you can of course also add a D flat 7 before C major 7. You can hear how much life this adds to the progression, but to really develop your comping, not just the chords, but the groove, the melody and the feel, then you need to think about how everything fits together, because just knowing the chords isn't enough. Exercises for developing those skills are what I talk about in this video on the 3 rules of playing jazz chords. Check it out, learn jazz, make music.